Included in the credits of just about every American film these days is the word Steadicam. It was only invented in 1972, but since then it's become a standard feature of big-budget films, allowing filmmakers a freedom of movement previously unknown. The Steadicam is what it says it is, a way of keeping a mobile camera steady. But it's such an appealing toy, some critics now argue that directors use it just for the sake of it, to jazz up the boring bits. Moving Pictures presents a guide to the smoothest operators in Hollywood.
Almost as soon as motion picture cameras were invented, people started moving them on every sort of contraption you can imagine. For years, professional cameras were big and heavy and had to be moved on wheeled dollies and cranes.
I was mad at you that day.
In classic Hollywood filmmaking, camera movements had very precise meanings. Someone like Maxo Foles would use it to express the transitoriness of time, to create a romantic feeling.
Used it.
In Caught, Maxo Foles uses the moving camera, I think largely for the beauty and elegance of the actual physical motion through space. It's a very classical use of the moving camera.
I don't think that the value of long takes are what they used to be. The German expressionist side of movies, which is the idea that you dolly through some environment very slowly and you get a sense of the three-dimensionality to it. That's not in vogue right now in Hollywood.
Around your neck, Charles.
Kane, I think we shall have to tell him now.
Yes. I'll sign those papers now, Mr. Thatcher.
You people seem to forget that I'm the boy's father.
It's going to be done exactly the way I've told Mr. Thatcher.
You look at movies now and you see a lot of films cut together images very, very quickly in a row. Oftentimes they're mismatched screen direction. Oftentimes one image is moving, one is static. A lot of this comes from our absorption with MTV, music television, and commercials. And there's this incredibly fast-paced cutting in a sense that gets away from some of the classic uses of the camera in general.
I had a little film production company, and I hated having to lug a dolly around if I wanted to move the camera. And if you walk with it, it's shaky, right? So it just seemed to me that it should be possible that the handheld cameraman could be isolated from the camera. It could be as mobile as the rest of humanity. Why should the cameraman have to creep around slowly, you know? Why couldn't he walk? Why couldn't he run? The very early shots that we made with Steadicam were clearly a new territory, a place that the camera had never gone before. In the beginning, we didn't expect everyone to immediately fall in love with this thing, and it's a conservative business, so there were some people that had greater control, for example, over their shooting if they did the classical dolly shots. But even those people began to realize that they were missing shots. They were missing shots where the rails would have been seen, you know, where they can't look straight ahead as you walk over rough ground and so on.
I think when Steadicam was first used, people were just they thought it was so neat that they just couldn't stop using it. I mean, an example of this would be The Shining by Stanley Kubrick, where you just spend the entire time sort of Steadicamming around the old mansion.
My host here, Ed DiGiulio, sent the demo that I mentioned, which contained all these amazing shots, to Kubrick, because DiGiulio had just provided him with lenses for Barry Lyndon. And we got a telex back almost immediately from Stanley that said, bravo, etc., it should revolutionize the way films are being shot. I must point out, however, that the skilled counterintelligence photo observer would see by the shadow that appears in your demo that you could learn certain things about it. Of course, horrified, we ran back into the screening room, and sure enough, in our demo was a very clear sun shadow of our gear, which we were trying to keep secret at the time. So we snipped that bit out. But Stanley was interested from the beginning, and it's my understanding that the sets for The Shining were built from the beginning to be not separable with flying out walls and spaces that opened up, but to be an integrated, actual, complete structure because of the Steadicam.
Here we go. Roll video.
Turn over, please.
Roll video. Slowly, slowly, slowly. Keep coming. More scared, Danny. Now, go. Elevator shoulder. Run, now, run. Look back, Danny. Look back.
There are two places where Steadicam has been very successful. The first has been in science fiction and horror movies. A very good example is in John Carpenter's Halloween. He partly uses old-style dolly shot moving camera, but he also introduces the use of the Steadicam in a completely new way.
What we're going to do now is do a very conventional but pretty dolly shot. We're tracking along the street with her. We're going to bring her up to this wall here. She's going to sit down. And we're going to come in close. Now we see the leaves blowing. It's kind of a lonely scene. Now we're going to do a conventional dolly shot around her. As we see down the street, here comes a car, focus will go to the car, and she gets up and enters the car. This is much more like Alfred Hitchcock would shoot a scene. You get a sense that everything is very controlled, and the close-ups are in the right place, and the point of views are in the right place. And in a sense, it's not a scene where something might jump out at you. But the idea in the opening of Halloween is that you've got a little boy, that you're not telling the audience that he's a little boy, and he's going to kill his sister. So the only way to really suggest that is to either go through the eyes of the little boy up until the moment of reveal, or you're constantly hiding your angles to not show that that's a kid dressed in a costume. So we opted for the movement. The first thing that you're going to see that we're doing here that you can't really do with a dolly is you're going to change directions. You're going to go off to the right and come around the pumpkin, around the edge, up into the window and look in. This gives the sense that the audience is the killer and is observing this kind of romantic scene going on in here. And the next thing we've got to do is to come all the way around the house and come in through the kitchen and get a knife. Now, conventionally, you could do it with a handheld camera, but as you turn, look in the other direction, coming around. As you make your moves in handheld, you would be really jiggling and you get the sense of the operator. Finally, we're going to spin around and come out the front door. And this again would have to have been on a crane because you're going up to a second story. Someone else opened the door here and the focus shoots out to the street. And it was timing in this case. And the camera operator came up to the car and then got down on his knees so that the point of view was looking up. And there he is. That's who did all the killings. Then we have a conventional crane, which is pulling back across the street. And I think you can see and feel slightly the difference in the moves. It's a little bit more steady and has a little bit more sweep to it.
A completely different end of the spectrum is Francis Coppola's One from the Heart, where Coppola uses the resources of Steadicam in order to move around Las Vegas with a kind of freedom I think that probably no filmmakers ever had before.
There were great opportunities in that film for a continuous kind of shooting.
Wish I was going someplace really wonderful, you know?
You could argue that there's no good reason to shoot continuously, that cuts are a noble institution. But if you want to shoot continuously, I'm your man.
I'm just a scarecrow.
One of the shots in that film was one of the more extraordinary shots because it involved an elevator that had been made, which is hidden in the floor of the living room of a complete house set, covered by a rug, and the actors go sweeping through the set and head for the stairs. I stand on the elevator, so as they went up the stairs, I rose through the air like some kind of Wellington's funeral procession and stepped out on the second floor as they got to the top landing, that was the theory anyway, and rushed down the hallway. And half the time, the elevator, which was a one-of-a-kind, very odd device, would hang up midway, and I would have to make a step equivalent to getting up on this table to get up to the second floor. So it was fairly dramatic at times, but it was fun.
The paradox is that if you use Steadicam to do all the things that it can do, critics like me say, oh, you're being flashy and you're in love with the technology. But if you use it without doing that, critics like me say, you could have done it before with handheld camera and tracks. So I think it's sort of a problem for the current filmmaker.
I think the worst thing you can do with a Steadicam is just be boring with it. It is a tool that's so facile that, for example, you see a lot of walk and talk shots where it just goes on and on with this kind of framing forever and forever. And although you're walking through an interesting universe, the camera just sees this.
It allows directors, I think, to be pretty lazy in what they're doing. Because rather than having a well-choreographed action sequence, you can stick a man with a Steadicam and have him sort of blunder his way through an action sequence.
Potentially, you can do things in Steadicam that you can't do in any other form as smoothly, potentially. But it really is like any kind of tool. It's in the hands of who's behind the camera and who's directing the shots. That's what it all comes down to.
You know, there are only 180, 200 professional Steadicam operators in the world at the moment, and we're finding our way into this. People are getting better. It's like violinists as they get really good. Now you can't tell it from the dolly. The best operators are amazing. Thank God they're all not great, because then, how would we differentiate ourselves? The purpose of those films that you mentioned is so that the rest of us look great. You know what I mean?
And if you want to see a really brilliant use of Steadicam, go see Martin Scorsese's Goodfellas, which opened in London yesterday.